Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
CMO tenure is notoriously short. Spencer Stuart put the figure at 44 months for CMOs at the top 100 advertisers in 2017, but then reported massive CMO turnover in Q1 2018, which means that number will actually drop, maybe below 40 months. So when I see a bio of someone who's been in the role for nearly 2 decades, it definitely gives me pause. Inquiring minds want to know her secrets, and yes, on this episode, we're going to try to find these out, as well as learn about a relatively new marketing initiative. But before I introduce my guest, I do want to point out that Kathy Button-Bell, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of Emerson Electric, hasn't just survived, she's thrived, and is frequently included on lists of top B2B, top women, and top global CMOs. So, Kathy Button-Bell, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Well, it's exciting to be here. We're actually sitting in this amazing bar in the Four Seasons Hotel in downtown New York.
It makes me feel very cosmopolitan. It's
Yes.
exciting to be here.
Well, in fact, we should be ordering them, except it's a little early in the morning. So, first I have to ask, most of the people I interview just have 2 names. And some, in fact, just have one because I can't pronounce their last name. So, like Chandar, we just went with one. So talk about you've chosen to have 3 names as your brand. How come?
Well, actually, there's a certain joy in the alliteration of Button-Bell.
It is. It's so alliterative. I love that. And I thought that must be it.
No one forgets it. Actually, I was born a Button and I married a Bell. So I kind of picked it up along the way. So
yeah.
And then it stuck. And no one ever forgets it. It's kind of like I always wanted to be Faith Popcorn.
Yes.
Because I thought she had the coolest
She
name
did
alive.
have a great brand.
And so I kind of jumped in her jet wash.
Plus, you almost have a 3-digit emoji. I mean, if
isn't it
only
cool?
there was one for Kathy, you could just kill it.
Really kill it.
Wow.
I know. It's good. So thank you.
All right. So, longevity is not a strange notion to you. I couldn't help but look at your LinkedIn profile and notice that the shortest period of time you had at a job was 4 years, 1 month, and that was 2 jobs, Wilson and Converse. But before that, you started your career as a bond trader?
Commodity
trader, and you did that for 6 years. So first, it took you 6 years to figure out you didn't want to do that anymore?
No, actually, it was a lot more complicated than that. But I actually waited to go into marketing. My father was head of marketing at Sears, and he was in the office of the chief executive. So I wanted to work for one of the ad agencies, but he had every ad agency in Chicago.
Right.
So I went and traded commodities until he retired.
Oh, there you go. But you knew all along. So this was just but still, sticking at it for 6 years. So, you like to settle in.
I do. Very much I do.
And how did you all right, what is it that makes you sort of able to to dig into a place, to sort of stay? What is it about you that
I think the thing that I love the most is working on the culture of the company, because that's where I always say, don't be the advertising girl. You want to be something much more important and try to help drive the culture in a positive, healthy way. And that's the most fun part of any of those jobs. And you can't help but settle in if that's what you're doing. You become part of the fabric of that. I always say, I don't really want to be the wheel. I like being the cog in the wheel.
Okay. So affecting the culture, it is sometimes on a CMO's list, sometimes not. When you say that, what do you mean, and what kinds of things are we talking about doing as the CMO to impact the culture?
I think one of the key things you have to do is put your wet finger in the air and feel where the wind's blowing. So when business is good, you have to take huge advantage of that moment to fill the organization with optimism. And if they're at a jog, try to get them to a run. You always want to accelerate positive change. And so if things are tough, like 2009, you need to try to be the thing I always said, we try to be the optimistic face of global business to try to help our customers innovate their way out of trouble, but most of all to keep the organization going and happy and enthusiastic about what they're doing.
So I get so what is it? I mean, are you creating communications? Are you creating programs? I mean, what are you actually doing? I get the attitude, but how do you make that happen as a CMO?
You know, a bunch of different ways. One way that we did, especially with our values rollout, is we went to the organization and actually, both during tough times and good ones, and survey them for how they feel. And I call it, like we went through transformation tension, I call it, as we shrunk the company before we grew again. So go out and ask them what is hurting. And then ask them, I asked them 2 questions. What are we best at? And what do we need to do to be more successful? And 13,999 employees told us the 3 things that we were made out of and the 4 things we need to do better to be successful. So they wrote their own plan.
So I love that. And so I'm working on my second book, and employees are a critical aspect of a CMO's arsenal, and it's so often overlooked. I mean, they look at it and they say 83% of my budget is for demand generation. I'm way down here. Employees are the last. And we, in the book at least, they talk about flipping that around.
Oh, I agree.
And so I love the fact that you've done this survey. Now, is this an annual thing that you do?
No, we did it as we came through our sort of the transformation, Dave Farr flattening the enterprise and splitting it into sort of 2 pieces to make us much more focused instead of 5 pieces. And it seemed the perfect moment to unify the organization with one set of values. And it's funny how we did 2 main things. We did Emerson.com. We totally started from scratch on our website. We had 750,000 pages. You want a nightmare.
Wow.
And both the values initiative and then and that, we did it the same, kind of really close together in a year. And the organization needed something to hang on to, I think, as we came out of that, which the values did a good job for us. And then and then in general, I think the programs just knitted everyone together. Emerson.com looks better and feels better now. That wasn't the best benefit. The best benefit was them having to work together to do it. And it drove so much unity and it drove so much collaboration. They didn't have a choice. Same thing with the values. We did that too.
So when I talk to our clients about doing employee surveys, we do try to encourage it to do annually, because if you're trying to
we do those too.
Right, to try to measure that. But merely asking them questions, open-ended questions, or to be involved in the brand, which everybody thinks they're a marketer to begin with, might as well take advantage of that.
No, it did. And we put it in their voice that way. And, it's very funny of how engaged the employees were. As I said, 13,999 took the survey.
That's a lot.
And, if I'd taken it, it would have been 14,000, but I thought it was more genuine to just leave it where it was. But, it was, it really made a difference. Every single one of them, there was an open-ended question at the end. Anything else you'd like to tell us? 13,999 people gave us responses. It's so much so that we had to take it in chunks.
Yeah, well, you can certainly slice and dice that data, and you really get a sense of the internal brand health.
Oh, and we had really positive cult culture that was so consistent. It was not hard to analyze the data and stuff for where we went going forward. So
I'm going to go back to this longevity thing, and I'm just, as we've spent 5 minutes together, and I can see that you're a likable person, and I would think that part of being able to survive at an organization, forget thriving for much, just to make your way through that, likability is an important characteristic.
Do you know what I think? I tell everyone about marketing, it's more important to be a good Pied Piper sometimes than to be correct. And it's more important to be consistent. Because, especially in an engineering organization, it kind of demands consistency, and it demands a discipline on the marketing that engineers can believe in. And that's why I always say research is your sword and your shield. Right in front of you.
Well, I love the consistency thing. So we did a survey among CMOs, B2B CMOs recently in preparation for the book, and asked what percentage you think of your communications are consistent across the board. And the number was like under 50%.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, okay, that's shocking. Because the one thing a CMO is in control of is consistency.
Right. Well, you hope so. Depends who's running around with it.
Well, exactly. And then that may be over. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about your motto.
Oh, okay.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
We're back. My guest is Kathy Button-Bell. We're sitting at the fabulous Four Seasons downtown in this amazing bar. It's inspiring. And it's brave, I might even argue.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. So, in an interview that I found you did 5 years ago on CMO.com, you noted that your motto was, be brave and have fun. Well, this show is all about bravery. We use the word courage, though. Are you still adhering to that motto 5 years later? And if so, can you share some examples of that kind of bravery?
Actually, yes, I guess I can. It is a couple things. One is, I think authenticity. If you can hang on to that when you're being brave, it makes it meaningful. Because it also means some part of it's a little scary and unexpected. And as a rule, like we did our 125th anniversary of Emerson a few years ago. And we launched it. We picked a date, made it the date. We hired Hank Green, the well-known blogger on science and math, and launched it in the Wall Street Journal with kind of an edgy ad. We did a television commercial called I Love Science with him and launched it on Big Bang Theory. And we did everything on one day and made it enormous. So we don't never do network television, but it was so consistent with who we were and what we were. And we've hung with that with big STEM programs. We love STEM days, at our organization all over the world where people bring their kids to work and do experiments all day long, engineering experiments. And it's been so terrific for kids to see through their parents' eyes and vice versa of their jobs.
So, just for the folks that there may be the two people in the world that don't know what STEM is. We're talking about science, technology,
engineering and math.
Engineering and math. Good. And the idea there is that, for a large swath of America, that kind of thing isn't cool.
Right.
And so helping folks see it and feel it, particularly among young ladies,
exactly,
where there's really things. So what specifically do you think you've done in that area that's made a difference?
Oh, I think it's one of our best things. So we started that about in 2015, which was our anniversary date. And we started launching all these We Love STEM kind of programs. We have a website that we dedicate part of our website to it. But probably the single best thing is we do an annual survey. And my objective, and we put money behind it, we do paid and earned, and I aim it at the media. I don't necessarily aim it at teenagers or even parents. I aim it at the media so they can do that. So I'm looking for pure amplification of Emerson supporting that just energetically and globally, for that matter.
So, and I love that, and that's definitely part of the toolkit that we prescribe. Anytime you can do proprietary research to generate news, it's awesome. How did you make sure that the research that you've been doing on STEM was newsworthy?
You know what? The ones they like the best about women. If you can, and since I worked at Converse, I know this. You get pantyhose in the title, you can get it printed. No, media loves things that show women are underrepresented, undercared for, under-encouraged, and those are the ones that get picked up by far the most. I can tell all day long about boys and STEM, but it's not as interesting.
And so one of the other things that I noted, a lot of times companies will do this research, they'll get some PR, and they'll stop. You've been doing this now for 5 years?
Yep.
And that really matters, doesn't it?
It does a lot. And actually, I can tell it works by how many organizations reach out to us to support them.
Right.
So I know it's working somewhere, so they're coming back at us for stuff.
And part of it is it takes time to get known for something. You get credibility over time. You can map the changes over time. And so it's just, it's such an easy thing for a brand to do, but it's amazing to me how few do it and do it well and do it with any kind of consistency over time.
Yeah, you don't want it to be a campaign, kind of one and done. And we've done it lots of different ways. As I said, we have lots of different aspects to it. We've hung with Hank Green. When we signed him, it was about 2 weeks before President Obama picked him to be one of the people who interviewed Obama after the State of the Union address. You might remember he picked 3 bloggers, kind of thing. And we have hung with him, and he's been just terrific for us to work with.
So going back to the Brave, I think you folks get this now. We're doing research on an interesting topic that the company is passionate about. You stick with it for a long time. You put women in the headline, and you're good to go.
That's a kind of recipe for success.
Yeah, there you go. That will work. And folks are listening for those kinds of tips. But we're talking about your motto and being brave. Again, this is the show called Renegade Thinkers Unite. How do you, as a CMO, make your staff brave?
Oh, I think I live the example. So, I always tell our creative, especially our creative agencies, scare me and let me pull you back. Take it to the edge. I said, it's so much harder to make something more interesting. It's a lot easier to tame something extraordinary back a little bit. And, actually, one of the best things is I've been with the same CEO for all 19 years. And he is the only person who has to approve what we do. So we're able to hang on to a single pointier point of view, and he is really brave. And that has made a huge difference, and we have great trust to one another on that.
So if we're going back to the longevity part of this, pick your boss wisely.
No, he's been great. He is my creative partner. I've also had the same creative director at our ad agency for 21 years because I worked as a consultant of the company first.
Interesting.
And I think that has a great thing. 3 of us, I think, have had an extraordinary run. And it lets you sequentially move. So it makes sense. It's not like switching agencies and switching ideas. We have the same tagline we've had for 19 years of consider it solved.
And this is one of the things that CMO turnover sort of just negates, because what happens is new CMO comes in,
new logo.
They want to make their mark. They've got to change the brand. They do new research. They fire the agency, and they lose it. And it's funny. She wasn't on the podcast, but another 3-word individual, Terry Funk Graham, who was the CMO at Jack in the Box for years and years and years, like 17 years, and in the marketing department for 20 plus, and she had the same agency and the same campaign, the Jack campaign for Jack in the Box. And it took that kind of longevity. And she was able to survive multiple CEOs until finally one came along that just
that happens, you know.
And, I think the interesting part about once you find the right position, and it takes a long time, and it's very hard to change perceptions of a brand. So consistency matters, right? Okay. And that, I think, is a good place to sort of say, okay, you've been on the job for almost 2 decades. How do you stay fresh?
Well, you hope that you learn and change. The world is so demanding now. I tell everybody, especially when we do our executive leadership programs, the world is so transparent. You know how much you're worth. You know where the jobs are. You know how much they pay. You know how much, the questions are going to ask you in a job interview. The world is like made out of glass now. And I think, staying fresh in that is being able to stay transparent yourself. The world is pushing me to change every day, and I'm in love with some of the new things we're able to do with voice and search and paid and earned and making it sing, and say, just don't be afraid to do the next thing. Because, I think, I look at ad agencies, look at the makeup they used to have to cake on people to do a commercial. Now it's, high def.
Right.
You look terrible with that makeup on. You don't do $500,000 productions over and over again. You do fast, quick, light things, it's different. And you just got to run as fast as you can with it.
So it's interesting, and one of the things that I have observed is, yes, there's all this great, amazing marketing technology, and you have to know how to use it, and there's all these channels, but the result has been an incredible overcomplication, but not an increase in effectiveness. If you look at most sales quotas, they're not being met. There's like half of them are being met. So even though marketing is delivering all these marketing qualified or sales qualified leads, marketing isn't getting more effective. And so one of the things, which is an interesting fact and a reality right now. So you could miss the forest from the trees here.
You can. And, I think one of the things that's great that's happened is the return to purpose and how important that is now for people. And, as I said, I think there's the authenticity. I always say if you only have $1, spend it on PR. Don't spend it on advertising, because you need, it's just like reviews online now of who do you believe and how do you believe them. You won't advertise yourself to greatness. You have to behave yourself to greatness first, and then that's how your earned works so much harder for you than you're paid, I think.
I love that. You can't, did you say advertise your way to greatness?
No.
Love that. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll come right back. Did you know that Renegade Thinkers Unite was ranked number 2 of the top 10 podcasts for CMOs by Crackerjack Marketing? Wow, we're really honored. Now, we couldn't do that without amazing guests, and we've had some amazing CMOs on this show, and also terrific listeners like you all. If you like what we do here, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Also, as a special thanks, I'd like to send you a free ebook on Renegade Thinkers. Now, for that, just email drew@renegade.com. Now let's get back to the show. We were talking about the fact that you can't advertise your way to greatness, which is a perfect transition to talk about your new advertising.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That was such a graceful way to get me into that.
So anyway, you have a new campaign or iteration of the campaign. Talk a little bit about it.
Okay. Well, as I said, for about 20 years, we've hung with our core brand idea of Emerson, Consider It Solved, which is you can depend on us to solve your greatest problems with you and on behalf of you as a customer. And I think in this age of purpose-driven communication and again, authenticity, we kind of have migrated the campaign to unleashing new possibilities. So we call it the We See campaign. And we've actually brought those stories closer to the business. They're a little more literal in some cases of everything from life-saving drugs being made faster and easier to access to natural gas being much better, and bringing great humanity into the campaign and warmth, where I think, we run on things like CNBC this morning, and in the middle of all that finance and all those numbers and all that, we love to show the warmth and care from the company that is truly genuine. And I'd say it's the warmest campaign we've ever done.
So, interesting to me, you're putting, I think I saw $7 million into video advertising, whatever, with television and digital, right? Yeah. And so much of the dollars are being spent today on demand gen and not at what some might call awareness building, top of the funnel type activity. Why now was it important for Emerson to sort of go broad with your story as opposed to highly targeted against the businesses?
So 2 things go on. I'd say 2 levels. Historically, we actually did do a lot more outside sort of advertising, and that's as we integrated the company more every year since about 2000 to actually make the critical mass big enough. And Dave Farr likes to call it the relevancy. So we're driving relevancy of the business. When we shrunk it a few years ago, we took it from about 25 billion down more like 16. We actually stopped advertising, and I turned almost all the money we had internally to get our ducks in a row and organize the business. We are organized. We've got that lined up. Business has been good. It's a great time to rebuild that relevance and remind people of who we are.
We're out here. We exist.
And I always say, it's funny, like the 125th anniversary, I thought was a weird number to celebrate originally, but I said, anytime you can raise your hand, you have an excuse to signal to the world something's going on over here, come look. I feel like this is one of those great times to do that. Dave Farr has had great visibility the last few years. He was president of NAM. He testified in front of Congress, and that's all earned and warmth and importance, and I think we needed to jump in there and support that at this kind of level.
And how do you measure a campaign like this? I mean, do you have tracking studies as sort of because it's essentially top of mind awareness. It's not like there's a really not even a call to action that I can find. It's just we exist and you should know about us.
Well, the digital is probably an easier call to action because people just click through on those. So we can read that, and we do brand lift studies. That's very easy to do on the digital, and it's essentially the same creative. So you're testing that at the same time.
Sure.
And we've seen now two things happen. I think it's a little bit of a trick on yourself to say, I'd say, of course you got a brand lift. Because as soon as you talk to somebody, it tends to lift the brand anyway. But our favorability went up, and also our emerging, on top of emerging new technologies lifted, which is what you want to see for credibility to your actual customer.
So your perceptions of you as forward thinkers. Do you have an annual sort of brand health study?
We do sometimes. I think in this case, we run it concurrently with the advertising because it's, you can do that just at the same time.
Sure.
So it's a little bit more on the temperature rather than annually. It's a little more sequential and perpetual that way. And I want to go back to your question you asked me about the lead generation. That's what our businesses actually do. And probably the difference between a business marketing person and being either at the platform like Automation Solutions, Commercial and Residential Solutions versus my job. It's my job to set the table for those guys to jump in and then generate their demand gen can go right in here.
And how do you make sure, and I've seen this lots where you have a sort of, we'll call it corporate, and has this lovely, beautiful brand message that says, wow, we're forward thinkers, we're incredible, we're on top of the technology, all these good things that a technology company wants to promise. And then it gets to the business unit and it's beats and feeds. How do you make sure that doesn't that at least there's some connective tissue?
Well, we're actively driving the We See campaign down into the businesses, and actually I'll see some next week, as a matter of fact, in our Automation Solutions business, to directly feed off of that, because it actually works very well. It is a very stretchy campaign of unleashing possibilities, whether you're selling transmitters or a corporation. And the demand is it has to have humanity. It has, we have sort of guiding principles, I would call them, more than anything. And they should nest, kind of like a Russian doll, is the way I would think about it.
I have to do, so by the way, if you haven't seen the Netflix show, Russian Dolls, amazing.
Oh, is it really?
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Oh, good. I just finished a couple of Netflix series, so I'm
amazing.
A little alone in the world.
They're only
now.
like a half an hour episode, so and you just power through them, binge, right? Yeah, binging through.
It's that dopamine in your brain when it goes 3, 2, 1, go again.
You used a lot of terms, very stretchy, and I love that. So the idea there is you have an umbrella idea for the business, but nonetheless they can apply it locally. You mentioned some guiding principles. Can you share some of those?
Sure. And I think, first and foremost, we try to keep, I guess I'd call them a lens. What lens are you going to put this through? It should always be about something we can see in the future. It's a promise to go forward on something, whether, as I said, we try to pick topics that are very sort of sensitive to the environment. We pick things that are sensitive. We do 1 billion more people breathing free in China, replacing all the coal-fired heating. Things like that are just positive, purposeful. We link everything to our noble causes, we call them, which there's 5 noble causes for each big piece of the business. So 5 for commercial and residential and 5 for automation solutions. And those are the guardrails really kind of on there. A look and feel, clear, clean, uncluttered. When we can, we love people and things. So.
And is there a review process? Is there brand police to make sure that this is consistent?
Actually, yes, as a matter of fact. So we actually set up sort of a Mary Kay kind of pyramid thing where hopefully it goes at least to the platform level. There's 2 senior brand officers on those businesses that actually everything's supposed to go through. And we actually do a pretty good job. I think within a year you'll see it improve a lot as we've really pushed out the We See campaign to the businesses.
And is there anything, is there anything about this where there's something new in terms of an offering that you as Emerson are doing differently in the marketplace or offering as a product or service? Because, I mean, it's a big promise to say we're going to help, 1 billion people breathe better. What's sort of the tangible things that makes We See real?
So I'll use an example of cold chain, one of our businesses, where it's literally farm to fork. We do all the refrigeration along the way. And that is a tangible change. We actually can do everything from we can monitor the food temperature when it's in cargo. We can monitor it. We do all the refrigeration in grocery stores. We can do an algorithm that the freezer door number 7 we monitor from Atlanta, Georgia, of a grocery store in St. Louis. Door number 7 must be open. Your temperature is raising, and they put in bricks that can do the algorithm of how long that chicken can last, or meat, or how fast bacteria will grow on it. And we can get that, as we say, to someone's table in a healthy way.
Very cool. So it's sort of IoT and
lots and lots of software.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's we're building our reputation around that.
Which today is really where so much of the world is going to. You're not selling hardware anymore. Even if you're selling hardware, It's about the software that you can manage.
It can inform you. Yeah.
So we've already talked about measuring success in terms of brand lift in certain aspects. Is there anything else we should talk about in terms of measurement of this campaign as it rolls out?
I think one of the things we're about to do is a culture climate survey of the organization, and I think what we'll see is a positive blowback from that as well, and that will show us, are the best days ahead or behind us. I want to see how well the transformation has worked inside the company, so that transformation tension, it should be alleviated. It may be not gone, but it's infinitely better. And then I think we should do the same thing in the outside world. We get a pretty good sense of that actually from the kind of surveys we're doing, but I think we can do more.
Interesting. Okay. And again, this comes back to why the employee audience is so important in all of this, in that you had a big transformation at the company that was painful because you sort of divested.
And
it was disruptive.
Things,
and disruption is always hard. So did you share any of this work with employees in advance of the launch?
We shared the tension. Mm-hmm. We shared all the survey work we did on the values deeply. Mm-hmm. That's the best initiative we ever did. We partnered with HR, and we brought in Korn Ferry, which was kind of we had a global task force. They were sort of like marriage counselors, and best practices, you do that with HR. I would say when we launched our branding in 2000, I don't think we did a good enough job. It was marketing kind of did it to the organization, as opposed to this was a true partnership. Marketing, HR is good at understanding the organization and how to disseminate things. Marketing is good at communicating. So in doing that, I think we hit a best practice on how we did that. So the We See campaign, actually we rolled out internally after our values. And that was really the only place it lived for a while, was actually inside. So whether you're at all our meetings, had We See video, We See banners, we've taken it to a diversity message as well. We've really kind of branched it out.
So, and that was before it actually went on network. So that to me was sort of just, you set it up for me perfectly. Thank you. So we did some research on, most CMOs agree that employee communications are important, yet they allow less than 1 month for internal communications before they launch a new campaign. And sometimes that really is problematic because the new campaign is about a promise of service or something that the company isn't actually prepared to do. All right. I digress. I want to circle us all the way back as we wrap up the show. We've been talking about CMO longevity, and I'm wondering if you have 2 do's and a don't for the CMOs in the crowd in terms of, one, I think why longevity is a good idea, and two, how to help yourself stay on course. If you
I'd
will.
say the number one thing is to be the chief complexity reduction officer.
Oh, wow. God,
That's number one.
Yes, indeed.
Because great marketing is a reduction in complexity. You should make things easier to understand, make us easier to do business with. And everyone from the COO appreciates that because it's financially efficient. I care actually much more about the understanding that people have about business. We sunset more brands than we invent. We're very acquisitive, so we acquire so many businesses that we have to cope with swallowing them whole. And Emerson.com has driven a lot of discipline on that. We're much better when we acquire companies on that. Secondly, I think you have to always, on the do's, always do the thing that's a little unexpected so you keep people's attention. And keep it interesting for people. When we launched our values, we used the children of the organization to do it. We interviewed 72 kids about values. So who wants to hear me talk about values? That is incredibly boring. Or even Dave Farr. So we let the children of the organization do it, which if you haven't seen the video, you have to see. It is just awesome.
I love it. And we'll include it in the show notes.
Yeah, you should. It's really fun. And as a don't, you have to be careful. I think the number one enemy of a CMO is defensiveness. I am like the marriage counselor a lot of the time and chief integration officer too. And I think defensiveness is the enemy. And and it makes you inauthentic, actually. It means you're not listening.
I love it. So I want to, your first comment about reducing complexity is a wonderful place for us to wrap this show up as I think about, again, this is sort of me on writing the second book, and the reality is that marketing has become more complex with all the tools that are available, with all the targets and so forth. But the definition of strategy is, in fact, what you say no to. And reducing complexity. For the CMO to accept responsibility for reducing organizational complexity, reducing communication complexity is a really profound place for us to wrap this show up. Because just think about, simple is hard. It means saying no to something.
It does.
And you have to do that somehow in a nice way.
Yeah, well, we try.
So, Kathy Button-Bell, thank you so much for being.
Thank you. That was a great pleasure. I want to help you on your book.
Oh, thank you.
I love talking about those. So that's great.
Thank you very much. And for all the listeners, always grateful for your time. I got a call yesterday from a CMO who was binging on the show and suggested other opportunities for me to cover here. So I encourage you to do the same. I always put my cell phone on 917-679-8852. There it is.
Wow.
Text me with an idea for the show. We're listening. So as always, until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.